No risk, no story. And here are the 4 biggest risks that you will ever take as a pilot. Let's go! Boom! Your attitude about taking risk is going to determine your altitude and how high you go in life. And the same can be said for aviation. And when it comes to being a pilot, there's going to be 4 major risks that you're going to take every time you step foot in the cockpit. And here they are. Let's run that thing. Let go! And you know what the number 1 risk is? You can take that finger that's holding up number 1 and point it directly at yourself. You, the pilot, are the number 1 risk. And the major reason why you're the number 1 risk and why we all are the number 1 risk when we step foot in the cockpit is because of those 5 hazardous attitudes that we all have a tendency to display at some time or another due to human nature. If you want a review of what those 5 hazardous attitudes are, there's a video on this page. It'll be a link in the description and a link at the end of this video. Make sure you click on that, review that, so you can keep yourself in check. But that's what makes you the number 1 risk. As a pilot, you're either a liability or an asset. You determine which one you're going to be by which attitude you decide to have in the cockpit. If you have any of those 5 hazardous attitudes, you have immediately become a liability in the cockpit and you are your biggest risk. But if you maintain a positive attitude in the cockpit at all times, regardless of what happens, you remain an asset to yourself and to everyone who you're flying with. Your family, your friends, and everyone who else is in that plane with you is going to be an asset to you and your mind, and you can get back on the ground safe. But you are always the number 1 risk and the biggest risk. It can go sideways real quick if your mind goes sideways. Stay safe. Boom! One of the most beautiful things about being pilot in command is that it's the ultimate form of accountability. It gives you that leadership mindset, and it's something that you must maintain at all times to keep you and everyone that's rocking with you safe. Accept that responsibility, step up, and make yourself an asset and never a liability. Let's go. The second biggest risk that you will face as a pilot is the environment that you're flying in. We all know one beautiful thing about weather is that it's constantly changing, baby. And we live in an era and a time that's just so beautiful that we have all this technology in regards to ForeFlight that you may be rocking to do your flight planning and determine what the weather conditions are, and a variety of other different apps and things that you have on you at all times where you can get these changes almost instantly. But you know the one thing about weather? It's constantly changing. It may be one way right now, and then 2 seconds from now, it may have a 2-4 knot gust of wind just slam right into your face. That's just the way it is when it comes to your environment. So you always want to be aware of this, and that can be your biggest risk, the ever-changing and ever-evolving environment. It may be one way when you leave the ground and immediately something different as soon as you enter a certain airspace. So make sure that you're always planning ahead and you always have a way out. You always have an exit strategy if you need to detour somewhere or do something differently than what you initially planned. Your environment can be your biggest risk if you're not prepared for it. Boom! The third biggest risk that you will face as a pilot, of course, is your aircraft. Your aircraft is mechanical, just like any other mechanical device, like your car, like household appliances. Things break all the time. The only difference is you're going to be at altitude if something decides to break and something decides to go wrong. So you need to be prepared and have a strategy to deal with anything that may break from a mechanical standpoint. For example, let's just say you're in flight and then your flaps all of a sudden stop working. Well, you know how to land the aircraft without flaps. You know what other control surfaces and things that you can use to control the altitude of the airplane and bring it down on the ground safely, whether that's your power controls, going in and out, whether of course slipping, doing a variety of different things, setting up a long downwind so you can turn base and do a variety of different things before you just give up or before you panic or before you have an impulsive kind of maneuver just because something broke mechanically. So always be on the alert for this and always have a strategy, an alternative strategy for things breaking that you know how to handle them and you know how to get yourself in the aircraft on the ground back safely. This is one of the biggest risks because things are mechanical and things break all the time. So just be prepared for it mentally and don't make any impulse knee-jerk reactions and get everything back on the ground nice and safe. And lastly, the fourth biggest risk is one of the biggest of them all, and that's just simply the mission. Why are you flying? Don't let the why of why you're flying get you caught up in anything and, of course, stretch you past your limits. For example, let's just say the why you're flying is just you're just taking you and some friends and family to go see this nice scenic area that's local in your area. Boom, cool. You do your flight plan, everything's good, the environment, the weather's nice, it's all good. But we know one thing about weather, like we just discussed, it can change on the dime. So it was all good when you took off, but then while you're en route, you start to notice that maybe there's a cloud cover coming in, maybe there's that cold front or whatever happening there, and all of a sudden it's a bunch of low ceilings and low vis kind of area. Do you have the mindset, particularly if you're not equipped for that kind of weather conditions, to maybe do an alternative route and do a detour and do something else? Or are you going to fall victim to the peer pressure of your friends and family that are rocking with you in the cockpit, that are looking forward to seeing this scenic view, and go commit to something that you're not prepared for? Those are the kinds of things how the mission can be your biggest risk. Let's just say you're being paid for a flight because you're working for pay in terms of some sort of business arrangement, whatever you got going on as a pilot, and then all of a sudden you're being pressured by this business to go on a flight or go to a certain area that you're not equipped to go to. That can also be problematic for you as well. So you must always make sure that you don't allow these kinds of things and allow the mission to overstretch you past your limits. You as a pilot always want to be comfortably stretching outside of that comfort zone, because if you stay inside your comfort zone, you never grow as a pilot. So you definitely want to be stretching outside of your comfort zone, but you want to do it strategically, and you don't want to do it as a victim to peer pressure, and you don't want to do it as a victim to the mission. That's how the mission can end up being the biggest risk that you can take as a pilot. Boom! And these are the 4 risks that you always want to be aware of, because they're the biggest risks that you will ever face as a pilot. Number 1 on that list, don't point the finger at anyone else except yourself. You are the biggest risk. You can be the biggest liability or the biggest asset. Always choose to be the biggest asset that you can be. Number 2, of course, is the environment. You want to make sure that you're constantly up on the environment, and the environment is constantly changing. So you constantly have to stay on top of things, particularly as it relates to the weather. The only change that's going to remain constant is change itself. So be on top of that. And then number 3, of course, is the aircraft itself. Always be prepared if anything goes wrong. If your battery, the magnetos, anything pop off, you're ready for it and you're ready to deal with it. Not only with your standard emergency procedures, but you always have everything in queue, whether you're looking for it, glancing at, okay, if anything was to pop off right now, what will be my emergency landing area? Just kind of think about that as you in flight. You know, just always looking around, scanning the area, thinking about detour kind of airports. These are the kind of things that help you reduce risk and stay safe. And lastly, of course, is the mission. You want to make sure you remain in control of the mission and don't allow the mission to control you. Never fall victim to peer pressure. Not only the peer pressure from your peers, but also too that internal self-pressure that sometimes people like to put on ourselves. We all are human, but also understand what your limitations are. And again, you want to comfortably and strategically stretch your limits and stretch outside of your comfort zone, not fall a victim to peer pressure and get yourself into a situation that is difficult for you to get out of. Never fall victim to the mission. Don't forget to like this video, comment on this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel. I am Donovan Batiste. Hey, this is Leadership Mindset. Big Whoa, a place where you can come for free and fun videos about everything that you need to know for you to become a pilot. Because I want you to feel what pilots all over the world feel when we swinging and banging that thing. Hey, one time, love you one time. Subscribe to this channel.